This presentation covers the very basics of the concept of an argument, an idea that lies behind all of philosophy. These ideas will be used in any philosophy class you take. In my classes specifically, I go out of my way to introduce them explicitly early in the semester, either with this video or with an in-class discussion. There will also be an exercise that you have to do to show that you understand this material, either online or in class. The first thing you need to know about an argument is that an argument in philosophy is not just people contradicting each other. Ordinarily, we might use the word argument to describe such things, but in philosophy, we need a much more specific definition. An argument for us is a part of reasoning. It is a way we try to rationally persuade people to agree with us. And if you want more on what an argument is not, you can check out the classic Monty Python argument clinic sketch. The link is in the PowerPoint slide. You can also just Google Monty Python argument clinic. Let's look at this in more detail. To see what an argument is, you need to know first what a statement is. A statement is a unit of language that can be true or false. So consider a stretch of language, just a phrase, my dog Edie. That cannot be true or false because it's just a noun phrase. It just refers to my dog. On the other hand, if I say my dog Edie is brown, then I have a statement that can be true or false. In this case, it's true. So that's the most basic thing that we need to, the most basic unit we're going to be dealing with when we make arguments. We're going to be making statements. An argument is a connected series of statements designed to convince an audience of another statement. So if I want to convince you that my dog is a good dog, I will make statements like my dog is very protective or my dog is very cuddly. And all of that will be trying to convince you of the conclusion that my dog is a good dog. So the statements in an argument are divided into the conclusion, which is what you're trying to convince people of, and the premises, which are the statements that the argument uses to support the conclusion.
The basic form of an argument is premise, 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 conclusion. Now I've got 3 premises here. The previous argument had 2. There's no fixed number, right? This diagram here is called the canonical form of the argument. And in the exercise, you will be asked to put arguments in canonical form. And that means you have to make them look like this. It looks kind of like addition with the conclusion as the sum of the numbers. Except they're not numbers, they're premises. So the important thing to do here is to learn to identify arguments and their parts. So what you want to do is you want to look to see if some statements support others, and you want to look for premises and conclusions. Premises and conclusions are indicated by the writer using indicator words. And so here I've got a list of premise indicator words and conclusion indicator words. I'll just give you a second to look over this list. What you should do is look for these words, and if you see them, then you know the statement you are looking at is either a premise or a conclusion. Okay, let's move ahead.
More or less like this. We are going to attempt to identify whether a given passage is an argument, and if it is an argument, identify the premises and the conclusion. So this is something I modified from a critical thinking textbook called Introduction to Reasoning. Cal Ripken has provided years of valuable service to the Orioles. He has appeared in 19 All-Star games. He has a World Series. He was a World Series champion in 1983. His number has been retired by the Orioles. Therefore, he deserves a spot in the Hall of Fame. Is this an argument? Just take a second to write down an answer on a scrap piece of paper next to you. Notice that it's got the word therefore in it. Therefore is one of our conclusion indicator words, and from that we can tell that this is in fact an argument. And so this is the argument put into canonical form. All right, here's another one. This is again taken from another critical thinking textbook. We can suspect that the inventor of eyeglasses was not an academic, for professors delight in boasting of their inventions, and before the 13th century we have no record of any self-styled inventor. Well, as you can see, it's got that premise indicator word, and based on that we can tell that it is in fact an argument, and this is the argument in canonical form. Example 3. So is this an argument? President Clinton today made a parting appeal to Indians for eased tensions in their region and stronger ties with America as he looked toward a brief and diplomatically dicey stop in Pakistan. Friends don't have to agree on every issue, he told business leaders in a domed room of the Bombay stock market. They just have to have an honest relationship about it. That was from the New York Times over 10 years ago. So is it an argument? No, it's not an argument. The reporter here is just describing some events. You might claim that Clinton is making an argument if you supply some more information. For instance, that his conclusion is that the United States and India should have closer relationships. His premise is something about the nature of relationships. That requires a lot of filling in, though. The important thing to note here is not whether Clinton is making an argument, but that the reporter is not making an argument. The reporter is simply reporting. Is this an argument? Example 4. In England, under the blasphemy laws, it is illegal to express disbelief in the Christian religion. It is also illegal to teach what Christ taught on the subject of non-resistance. Here, Russell is referring to a separate law in England during World War I, making it illegal to advocate for pacifism. Therefore, Russell concludes, whoever wishes to avoid being a criminal must profess to agree with Christ's teachings, but must avoid saying what that teaching was. So is it an argument? Therefore is a big clue. So it is an argument, and this is the argument in canonical form. One thing to note here is that the conclusion doesn't really do much that isn't already in the premises. Really all that the conclusion does is juxtapose the two premises next to each other. It just puts them together with the word but. That's fine. An argument can do that. In fact, that makes it a very good argument because you know that the premises really must lead to the conclusion.
Another important definition is an inference. An inference is the connection between those statements in an argument, between the premises and the conclusion. You can think of it as argument glue.
I want to end by highlighting a couple features of arguments which will, I think, clue you into the wide variety of things out there that actually count as arguments. You can have an argument in the philosophical sense on almost any subject that you can make a statement about, as long as one of your statements is supporting another one as a reason to believe that second statement. In particular, the statements of an argument can either be descriptions of the world, of the physical world, of the world that we sense, that we smell and touch and see, or they could be moral statements. So we can divide premises up into descriptive premises and moral premises. In the first example that I gave in this presentation, I had one descriptive premise. O.J. Simpson intentionally killed Nicole Brown. That's a description of what may have gone on in the world. That is, Simpson formed an intention to kill his ex-wife or his estranged wife and then stabbed her. The argument also has a moral premise. It is wrong to intentionally kill people. This isn't about something that happened in the world. This is about what should happen in the world. It should not contain killing. And then the conclusion is also a moral statement. Now, it's important to note that if you give a moral argument, if you have a moral conclusion, you must have at least one moral premise. Arguments can also have premises that are definitions. Definitions aren't exactly descriptions of the world. They are stipulations that we use words a certain way. So check this variation of the first argument out. O.J. Simpson intentionally killed Nicole Brown. That is a descriptive premise. Intentionally killing someone is murder. That's a definition. It's not actually the legal definition, but we can just accept that as a definition for the point of this argument. We then can change our moral premise to murder is wrong. Therefore, what O.J. did is wrong, and we still get to a moral conclusion because we had one moral premise. Descriptive premises can include religious statements. So we can begin the same argument in the same. We can begin the argument we looked at before in the same place and go somewhere different with it. O.J. Simpson intentionally killed Nicole Brown. That's a descriptive premise. Intentionally killing someone is murder. That is a definition. You can also add the premise, God said, thou shalt not murder. This is a specific kind of descriptive premise. It's a religious premise. It's describing something that may have happened in the world that people believe for religious reasons rather than for scientific reasons. And then we can have as our moral premise that it is wrong to disobey God. Therefore, moral conclusion, what O.J. did was wrong. The last thing to note is that arguments will sometimes contain chains of inferences. There'll be not just a final conclusion, but other conclusions that you reach along the way to the final conclusion. And we will label those intermediate conclusions, and we can mark them off with a dotted line rather than a solid line. So here we go. I'm filling in, and in this argument, I'm filling in an implied intermediate conclusion that was in previous versions of the argument. O.J. Simpson intentionally killed Nicole Brown. Descriptive premise. Intentionally killing someone is murder. That's the definition. We can put those two premises by themselves together to get a conclusion that what O.J. did was murder, right? And we're going to label that the intermediate conclusion. After that, we have our moral premise that murder is wrong, and we get to the final conclusion, the moral conclusion that what O.J. did was wrong. Okay, this should be enough. This should be enough background information to do the first exercise. Please try that out now.